right. Welcome back to another Monday on the HEF podcast. That's the podcast of the Home Education Foundation. HEF is an organization that was started by Brenda Dickinson and Craig Dickinson in the early 90s, I believe it was 1992, to kind of continue the work that they had started in helping make home education legal by statute in 1985 with the help of Representative Daniel Webster at the time. And we're so grateful for the work that Brenda has done over the last 40 years in making the Home Education Foundation what it is today and bringing rights and opportunities to parents across the state of Florida to the tune of scholarships, dual enrollment, transcripts. I don't believe people realize that you could start homeschooling at that time, but then you couldn't transfer anywhere. And she fixed a lot of things over the years just through being a persistent voice at the Capitol for parents in an official capacity as a lobbyist, a registered lobbyist. And now she's passed that torch on to me, Jason Crawford, the new, or should I say Hammer, the new lobbyist for home education. And we're so very thankful to have her with us today. We're also thankful to have our top sponsors with us. We have mentioned them in every stream that we have. We're very thankful for their support. Without them, it really would be so much more difficult to do, or not possible to do the work that we do. So we're so grateful for their involvement. Arete, FPEA, Fisher Precious Metals, and TBHC Group. And we do actually have a guest today, Reagan. Welcome. Welcome. Yeah. Reagan joins us. She's not necessarily a employee or a staff at TBHC, but she's one of the presenters and a recent homeschool graduate. So thank you for being with us today. I know you're very busy and you've only got a little bit of time, so we'll dive into what you want to dive into very quickly, but thank you for being with us. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us, our audience, a little bit of an introduction. I have talked about you before on our podcast, but I'll get to that in a second. Tell us a little bit about you.
Grandson, he and I work together in politics, so I thought that was really cool that you mentioned him.
Could you back up? I'm sorry, I made a critical error and your audio wasn't on until just now. Your mom messaged and said that, yeah. So give us a real quick, again, you know what, it was so great, I wish everyone could have heard it, but let's let them.
All right. My name is Reagan. I'm 18 years old. I've been part of the home education community my entire life. I just graduated from Classical Conversations and from SALT, which is a homeschool group in my area. I have been very involved in politics and in serving in lots of different capacities. Like Jason said, I have been recently working with TBHC and presenting up at their upcoming conference. I have 2 different breakout sessions I'm leading. Super excited for that. But I've just had a lot of experience in different aspects of home education and the rights that come with that, also the opportunities that come with that. And so I'm really excited to share about those things.
Well, I'm excited.
But you left out one important thing that they couldn't hear before, is that you're going on in the honors college.
Yes, I'm headed in the fall to the University of South Florida's Judy Genshaft Honors College for Political Science and Pre-Law.
Yay! That's awesome. And thank you, Brenda, for catching that.
So home educated students can make it.
What? No way, man. Yeah. Listen, thank you for being with us. And I want to kind of bring everybody up to speed. We have talked about your situation before, but we hadn't really kind of thrown your name out there. I wasn't sure if that was something you wanted, but since we talked about it today and you were on the podcast, I'm thankful for you. You had a situation, one of the reasons why we were pushing so hard this legislative session was on SB 248 was because of situations like yours, where you were told that that school was not your own school and you couldn't play for that school, and so you couldn't choose that school. And if it hadn't been for someone leaning on them from the political arena, the superintendent wouldn't have allowed you to play. And then you did play.
Yeah.
And
I did.
you
Yeah.
played for what, 3 years soccer?
I've been playing soccer for actually 16 years. I played in middle school at Seven Springs. That whole situation happened over there with Speaker Sprouse and then the superintendent kind of having to get in there and look at that loophole and say, like, no, that's not appropriate. Schools, you can't do that. And then I ended up playing for Eastlake High School for 3 years.
And then suddenly, this past year, tell us about it.
Yeah, I was a captain 2 years ago, a starting player last year, and then starting this year, I actually didn't even make the team. The last half of the season, I didn't play more than maybe 15 minutes the entire season, which we never really got any solid answers from. I did my best to communicate with the coach and tell him, like, I don't appreciate this. I here all the time. I put so much effort in, and I'm being treated as less than. And nothing worked. I went everywhere from I had a nice conversation with him to I actually yelled at him one time and got really upset, and nothing changed. Yeah. And we believe that there was some sort of behind the scenes. Parents were upset that someone who's a home education student was unable to, or that was taking time away from their students.
I believe that. I've seen evidence of things like that. It doesn't blow my mind to think that that's possible. I think you just woke up one day, though, and I just think you just weren't very good at soccer anymore. I think you were captain, and you were great, and then I think maybe you didn't eat your Wheaties or something, but I think you just woke up one day and just weren't good at soccer. Don't you agree?
Frankly, no, I don't.
Yeah, that's so hard to believe. Yeah, it's terrible. I'm sorry that that's happened to you, but it is something that I absolutely, man, talking to your mom and to you and meeting your dad really helped fuel a lot of the passion, and it honestly gave me a very valid, shareable experience to give to the senators and representatives as we were pushing this year. And I'm very grateful for you sharing that with us and with me, because stories like that are critical, and a lot of parents I have talked to, they give up early. They'll give up in the process. It's difficult. There's uncharted territory for them. You know, they don't know necessarily what the law says. They don't always know exactly what their rights are, and then they hear one thing from the county office, and then the athletic directors say this, and then the superintendent says that, and by the time you get a couple of emails in, you just feel that the world is against you and you're overwhelmed and you have no voice. And a lot of parents give up at that moment. And, you know, with your experience, you know what kind of fight it is, but is it worth it?
I think it is. I think anything that gives us as students rights to participate in things that public schoolers get to, even in areas that aren't our own. I know the Tim Tebow law, if anybody's familiar with that, that allows students to school choice into areas that are not their own. That was a hard push to get that sort of open to homeschoolers, but it is such a great resource because Seven Springs isn't where I was zoned originally, and it took a lot of emailing and fighting with people to get them to realize that it is actually, I'm not zoned there, but because of this law, I'm allowed to go there. And schools were saying, no, you can't. And it took the superintendent and the Speaker of the House actually saying, no, you can't exploit this loophole. This isn't fair.
Yeah. It's interesting because that's the exact conversation we've been having. And Tim Tebow did take advantage of that statute that was in place. It's actually in Florida. I think other states are calling it the Tim Tebow law, or bill. In Florida, it's actually called the Craig Dickinson Act. It's actually named after Brenda's husband, who passed in the early 90s. Yeah, it's 1006.15. And you're right, it does give very specifically. We did a deep dive, episode 83, if anybody's curious as to which episode and you want to go back and listen to it. We did a very deep dive. And interestingly enough, I shared that with the Department of Education's chief of staff. And He
Mm-hmm.
called me back a couple of weeks ago and basically said, "You're right. Our attorneys agree with you. We didn't realize this was a widespread issue. We thought it was isolated incidents." And that speaks to the importance of both, one, understanding the law, and two, when don't give up on your fight.
Mm-hmm.
Collect your voices, bring them together, pool your issues. I literally put an entire spreadsheet together
Mm-hmm.
of all the issues, all the people that they had contact with, who their kids were, their parents' contact information, the county that they were in, and the one and the sorry, the school that they were zoned for, and the school they wanted to play for. I believe those were on the list, maybe not, but um,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of details. And when I handed it over to them, they were completely taken aback. They didn't realize how widespread the issue was. They thought it was maybe one here or there. Once they got their head
Yeah.
wrapped around that, once we agreed on what the law said, and once we had enough parents who were willing to not back down, we actually made progress. And that those things are critical that people sitting at home or going about their busy day may not realize. For young people like you, though, I'm very interested. I'm very interested in how to get your generation, your people in and involved. Not everybody's interested.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got some topics. You're speaking at the Tampa Bay Homeschool Conference, and you have some
Mm-hmm.
topics. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about those, and what those mean to you? Are they a part of a bigger goal for you?
So like I said, I have two topics. The first one is about Teen Pact because I feel like it is an amazing resource for homeschoolers like
Yeah.
us. I feel like Teen Pact, people probably, if you have heard of it, just sounds like some weird government camp. If you haven't heard of it, Teen Pact Leadership Schools is a class for anyone, really, as long as you sign up. It's a class that starts out very political, very government centered. So you learn how to be a good
Mm.
citizen under the government. You learn about politics. You learn about the Constitution and the founding documents. You learn about the judicial system. And a lot of people probably don't have that information or don't have that much training to the point where they know, like, here's how a bill works. Here's how a bill becomes a law.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how a legislative session works. And then if you're not interested in that, there's several alumni tracks you can be part of. The national convention, there's several hundred students all meet up together and we all participate in speeches, and we run for office or we play sports together. There's also a girl-centered track where you learn how to be a strong, independent young woman in today's society. There's an all males track where you learn to be a strong young man in today's society. There's media and business.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it's an amazing resource for people who are looking to find community and to learn what your strengths are.
Yeah.
The second track I'm talking about is kind of things that it's called What I Wish I Knew. It's more like I was blessed with amazing parents who knew. My dad works in higher ed. My
Mm-hmm.
mom and both my parents were actually in politics for a very long time, and they knew how to set me up for success and help me achieve my goals. Give me options as to what career I wanted to pursue.
Mm-hmm.
But what are some of those parents and students that don't really know what they're looking
Yeah.
for? What are some conversations we need to be having? What are some opportunities you have as a parent or as a student? So the second one is just kind of about home education in general and some great opportunities.
Awesome. I mean, that sounds great. There's a lot of that I think maybe some of the young people listening, and hopefully they'll share this. A lot of them are on Facebook, and I get that. We go live on Facebook for a reason, but we actually our podcast is actually now on Spotify, Audible, Amazon Music, Apple, iHeartRadio, and then there's others. And I would like to reach our young people a little bit more because we have a lot of opportunities for them to dive in and get some experience. Maybe, like you said, they may not be interested in the political end of it, but everybody cares once they're told they can't do something they want to do. And then nobody knows how to get involved and actually like change any of that or impact any of that. And that kind of boils back to something that's been on my mind, and it's on my mind every time 4th of July comes around, and that's our Declaration of Independence. You know, early founders declared independence from the normal ways of doing things, the normal way of being governed in favor of self-governance, to take a look at themselves and say, we can take it from here, thank you. And they stood for that. They died for that. And on 4th of July, 1776, isn't when it was finished. It isn't, I mean, you could argue that it's the birth of the nation. That was the beginning of a fight. They picked a fight, and they were willing to pick a fight. And it was nebulous. What they were building, they had no real exact look and feel. They had no idea that there would be 50 United States. They didn't even know what the flag would look like. How many iterations that went through. There was so much uncharted territory. They just knew enough was enough, and they wanted to stand for their rights. And there's a lot of parents out there who are looking at public education and what it's become. And they're thinking the same thing. And I think it's important that we understand the roots and the legacy of what we come from is that just being able, belief in self-governance is key. I can take it from here. I look at homeschooling or home education as the ultimate DIY, right? Like the kids are mine. I'll do it myself. Thanks. And we've gotten to a point where we don't trust that anyone's capable of doing that without some sort of massive amount of. It takes a village. It takes a village. I'm like, just take some parents. And then sometimes you get together and parents share ideas and benefit. They call it community, or co-ops, etc. And so you start to see strength in numbers. And you look at our early days of our nation growing, and they did the same thing. You know, they just people living together, townships form, and then they grow, and then they're declaring that their states in the world of governments and empires, they declare that their states are independent and they can do trade and come up with their own laws and do their own thing. And I'm grateful for that, because Florida is its own state. The free state of Florida has its own rules and laws about how we educate, and that we can. And it's spelled out in black and white that parents can choose home education as one of those options. And we need not lose sight of things like that. And whenever you're looking at options, your taxes pay for, like public school system or this or, like there are options. It's important to understand how to access those. There's lots of people who are going to tell you you can't do this and can't do that. And they're new hires. Some of them have just moved into the position recently. Some of them have been there a long time. They just don't like these pesky, annoying homeschoolers are always trying to like do their own thing. It's so weird. Why do they do? It's so hard to keep track of them. But it's important.
Yeah.
It's important.
I feel like touching on something else that you said a little bit ago, but it wasn't just the adults, right? It wasn't just the adults who were involved in this declaring of independence. Like how many of the younger kids too were agreeing with and believing in the things that their parents were believing in? And how many of them went out and fought with the adults or served with the adults or just waved flags with the adults? So speaking to any other kids out there who are listening, if you see a problem, it does not just depend on the adults to do the talking. It doesn't even just depend on you to do the talking. Get involved in a community, get involved in this Discord, and there's one for every county. You can find other people in your area who are experiencing the same issue, or even people across the state who are experiencing this issue, and you may not realize it. You could walk into your legislator's office and bring this issue to their attention. I did it with some friends of mine when I was like 14 years old. Nice. It is possible for you to be the change, not just the adults who are helping you educate at
Reagan,
home.
You're giving me chill bumps. I love it. I love it. I'm going to back up a little bit because you said get involved in this Discord. Maybe people don't know. Maybe you've got some people listening who haven't, because we do that. People chime in and they first find us, But we do have a Discord server, and it does have a channel in there for every county. So anyone who wants to get in and find people in their county, or if you're having issues in your county, they're there. There's options for the scholarship channels. There's non-scholarship channels. If you just we're just tried and true homeschooler, home education people. Those channels of support are in there, and all kinds of questions. And we have people like yourself who are in our Discord, for young people, if they want to get involved and ask questions or B, do something more like what you were suggesting. I want to do this, but I don't know how. Great, we'll come alongside you and help in that process. And I don't think a lot of people understand or know that they could just walk into the legislator's office. Tell me more, or share with me a little bit about that experience, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so it was back when I was trying to play for Seven Springs, and we realized this loophole that the school boards were using to say homeschoolers couldn't come in and play. They were trying to minimize class size, and by doing that, they were minimizing the people that could come in and play for their extracurricular sports, which extracurricular sports within the schools, they don't actually affect the classroom size. And they were just taking advantage of homeschoolers who had no idea that's the law. So after we had worked, or when we were having this call from the superintendent, and he was saying, or from someone from the school board was saying, no, you can't, no, you can't, no, you can't. We actually called, I called my dad. My dad was sitting in a meeting with Speaker Sprouse, and Speaker Sprouse called the superintendent for that county, who was in his wedding, and says, hey, get this fixed. And within the hour, he called us back. But then we realized that's not good enough to just get it fixed for me. So within the next month or so, I believe, we went in, I was in the area, I was up in Tallahassee, and we scheduled a meeting with Speaker Sprouse's assistant, and we told her, this is what we're experiencing, and it's not just happening to me, it's happening to home education students all over the state. This is a loophole that they're exploiting to minimize us and our interaction with the public school. We need to get this fixed. And then that sort of issue came up, and they continued working on closing down that loophole.
That's awesome. That is absolutely fantastic. Brenda, you have your hand raised.
I've been listening. Y'all are making great points. I didn't want to interrupt the flow, but that is so important, because having a law on the books that you can refer to, even though our interpretation of it and the intent of it was exactly what you were saying, Reagan, but it wasn't spelled out quite clear enough, because the class size amendment came after the law was passed. And so Jason did a fantastic job, but look, it has taken us 10 years to get a law on the book that is very clear, that says home education students can play at any public school. They can't argue with that. So things don't happen overnight. It takes a lot of legwork. It takes a lot of talking to different people. And actually, when Jason did his drill down, and what was it, number 85 that you said, 83, that he went all the way from the Constitution down to the statutes, and explained how class size did not affect, like you said, extracurricular activities. In fact, those were specifically excluded. But even the attorneys who were in the system at the school board level, at the superintendent's association level, they argued the feel-good position of these are our schools, we control it, it's our money. No, it's not your money. It's taxpayers' money that supports you. Therefore, my parents who pay taxes give me the opportunity to participate, because we're funding the public schools. It's just that people have held on to the old way of doing things. And even though choice has come in as of 1999 with the McKay Scholarship, it's amazing. There are people still in the system that these are our schools, and you've chosen not to participate in the academics of the school, therefore you're not eligible. So it takes a long time to change attitudes, and it's exactly what you did, Reagan. You pointed it out, you went to the legislator, he fixed it, but then he went on to do something else, and they circled back to their old ways of doing things. So it's a constant battle, and that's why, and I'm going to make a point here, but that's why having a lobbyist who can attack this at a top level, Jason's already talked to the Department of Education Chief of Staff. They're going to come out with a technical assistance paper and basically slap the superintendent's hand and say, sorry, the law says, and then explain that home education students can participate. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of persistence, and most people give up because it's just, it doesn't happen overnight, but that's the way laws are.
Well, Reagan,
It does.
I am thankful that you're not one of those people who gives up. You have put a lot of effort in, and I'm glad to see that you're continuing to be involved even after your graduation, speaking and being involved, helping young people. And I look forward to seeing that and helping you in whatever way we can. I know that you have to go because I know that you're short on time. So last words for you before you go, and then Brenda and I will take the podcast.
Just be aware of what's going on in your community and issues you're experiencing. Be willing to speak up because you have a voice and it is worth something. And just stay connected. Join us in Discord. We'd love to hear from you. Love to answer your questions. You can DM me personally and ask anything. I have lots of answers about career choice or career-wise and stuff like that. So thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you, Reagan, for being with us today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. See ya. Bye.
And thank you, Vicky. I see you in the comments over there. Thank you for helping lend your daughter to us today to interview and to talk to. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, Brenda, you're absolutely right. I think that, and I don't know, maybe I try not to overdo it because I can be a bit what's the word, intense when it comes to things that I've become passionate about. But there's something about this time of year for me that becomes very roots centered. I get very focused on understanding where we come from, even to the point of doing research on the entire public education system. I'm like, how is it in such a short span of time in all of human history, where parents are the default people who teach their kids, we have found ourselves in an environment where it's the default to just hand them to someone else. Their minds are just completely given over. And originally, public education initiatives were created ultimately out of a religious and moral, effort to say that, hey, these young people become citizens, and they also then become governors, and they should have a good foundation for governing, and that it needs religion and morality at its base. And that was really the first push for public education. And I think it's somewhere in the mid-18s, where, was it Massachusetts or something original? I have to check all of my details, but originally made the first compulsory education laws. And it was minimal, like 3 months, I think, and now we have this system where you're there almost all year, and you're there and you're educating, and then you have homework at home, and then like the number of metrics and the stuff you have to learn piles up and increases, and no one else is even qualified to teach your children. Like, how dare you take them from that system? It should be their whole lives should be devoted to that. Who they are as people is graded, and they'll live or die in success based off of what they score there. Don't take that away from them. How are you ever going to socialize them or give them any kind of leg up in life if you don't have that? It's like, wow, we started so small. It was a good idea, and we've gone and it's escalated to this massive default position. And I would love to encourage parents to, your children's minds, guide them in whatever way you can. And you don't, if you feel torn, like you're sending them to public school and you wish you had more time with them, you can. You 100% you can. You don't have to second guess that choice. You can choose that. I'm not telling you you have to, or it's the only way to do it. I think it's very important. People are free to make that decision for themselves, but oftentimes they're not aware that they even have a choice, and they just wish they could have more time with their kids, or they wish they could pour more into them or teach them that way, or my parents didn't show me this and I really wish I had someone to show me that. You can. 100% you can. Especially in the free state of Florida, you can. Other states, it's a little bit more difficult sometimes. Florida has great laws. We have great laws, and we have a lot of that to thank Brenda Dickinson and those early moms, those pioneers. Never underestimate the power of a mom with passion. Vicki, thank you for being in the chat with us today too. You've obviously instilled your daughter with that, and that's going to echo. That's going to echo forward. That's so important. Brenda, I'm talking a lot. You want to chime in? Go
Sure.
ahead.
Well, I think, let me just share when I first had to pick up the mantle myself after Craig died.
Mm-hmm.
One of the visions that I had was that sooner or later that home educated students would become the leaders. And because they're not being taught that for the most part in the public school system, they're taught how to memorize and take tests. And unfortunately, the teachers have lost a lot of their creative ability to teach because of the requirements that they have from the state level. So things have changed, and it's sad because there are a lot of public school teachers that are creative and want to do good things, but they are strapped. So I think that parents need to realize that what began as a way to educate those that were not being educated. In fact, in some states, it was illegal to educate or teach a child who was other than white how to read.
Right.
And so the public school system kind of developed, but it wasn't a whole system. It was like one-room schoolhouses where you had different ages of children there, and they were learning from each other and a dedicated teacher, and there weren't systems in place to do that. Over time, that system began to eat up parents' rights that existed in the beginning of our nation. I mean, parents were the child's first teacher, and over time we gave up the fight to keep our rights, and so we all just succumbed to the public school system. Now we've got to fight to get our kids out, because the mindset, and you've talked a lot about culture. The culture now is more like, why aren't you sending your child to the public school? Whereas we left the mindset of, it's my responsibility as a parent to teach our child. So in a way, we're fighting a cultural revolution to then take back what was first ours. And so if we don't fight, just like Reagan said, if we don't fight at the lower level to keep our laws intact and to push back when we're told no, when the law says that we have that right, they're going to gobble us up again. And I think one of the things that superintendents and authorities, school board maybe, members see it as their money, their children, when in fact it isn't. And it's the thinking that's wrong. It's not the laws.
And this kind of brings me back to where my mind has been. I read the Declaration of Independence. I like to read it annually around this time. Like 80% of that whole thing is just being PO'd at the king, because he forgot that they're not his people. Like, they're not his kids. They're their kids. And that level of independence, that split, the grievances stopped being addressed, the issues that they had stopped being heard, the abuses, the lack of adherence to accountability in the leadership from the British overseers, that were put in place. And if you read that document, it is 80-20. There's an intro and an outro, and the whole rest of it is grievances for taking away this and taking away that and not doing this and that. imposing taxes without consent and depriving, in many cases, trial by jury, basic things. And they dissolve. They dissolve their connection to that. And the only way they would have the guts to do something so pivotal is if they just believed they could do it themselves. They were capable.
And they had the right and responsibility to do it.
They believed they had the right, and then they sought the means to enforce that right. And that kind of goes to my next part, which is we have no rights.
Well, let me make a point there before you go to the next point. Many of them were so committed to having the independence for this nation and their rights to own land and all the other things that are in there. They were willing to put their family, their life, their fortunes on the line. And many of those founding fathers died poor, and they lost everything that they had to defend the rights that they believed they had, the God-given rights that they had. And sometimes that's what it requires. I mean, maybe we're not going to get killed, but
what you said is literally the last line of the Declaration of Independence. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. You're not wrong. You nailed it. And that spirit, that do-it-yourself spirit, is critical. And I will say it is it's the biggest critique that I agree with when it comes to these scholarship programs, is that they have a tendency to absolve people of the do-it-yourself mindset and create a reliance on someone else to do it for you. And I think that as the home education community, we have to keep that voice alive. We have to keep that part of our voice loud, strong, well-informed, and we have to stand up, even within, they're taking our tax money. To get some of it back is not a problem. That's fine. You want to take the scholarship, you want to take some of that back and do a better job, do it better because you think you can. I support that spirit and that mentality in the scholarship program. I think we have to be very careful when it comes to just taking it hook, line, and sinker without any questions.
I think that's so true. And home educating parents are the most creative and resourceful people you'll ever meet, bar none. They're going to get what their child needs. And we've been for years getting no money and finding the curriculum we need. Now, a lot of them have bartered things like ballet lessons, and they'll clean the studio to their child to get the ability to participate. So I'm saying they're really resourceful. And what's happened, which I think is sad, is the scholarship money takes away that necessity to find those ways and fight for your child on an individual basis. I don't have a problem with parents being able to have the extras that they couldn't provide, but we've never gone lacking in curriculum. And that was, you and I were in a big fight, 2 years ago? Time flies when you're having fights, but I can't call it fun.
I enjoy a good fight.
Right down to the last Saturday before the session ended on that Friday, a week later, we were battling to keep the right of parents in these scholarship programs to be able to choose those extracurricular activities that would broaden the ability of their child to use their talents and skills. And so parents in Florida have just walked into home education and they think it's always been that way. Well, some of us kind of put our lives and our children on the line in 1985 because we were hiding, and we ran the risk of being charged with truancy. But the fight was worth it. And so I relate to
Yeah.
those founding fathers.
Yes,
But on the same note, we're still
that's
fighting
correct.
for our rights and our individual rights. Just as last year, the extracurricular activities, the year before that, maintaining the rights for parents in the PEP program to use their funds for, whatever their child needed and customize their education. The fights never ended for freedom.
No. And it's interesting to me, the support of the Declaration, mutually pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. I think it reminds me of something that when I was helping you pass the torch, and we were looking for that person, and I'm like, well, we need the website, we need to like make the shift. We've got a lot of work to do to get it ready to hand to someone else. I started to understand the life part of that you had dedicated yourself to. And it wasn't lost on me the level of sacrifice that you made. And I started to question where such people come from. Because it's very rare to see people of that ilk who are willing to do that. And man, I just knew it wasn't something that could be done by a mercenary for hire. That's not how our founding fathers did it.
Right.
They made a declaration, something they believed firmly in, and they were willing to fight all the way down for it. And that's the beauty of that moment, is that isn't when it was over. That was when it began. That was when the problems really took off. That was when all the fights started. And it wasn't fast. It wasn't like, oh, we did that. We had a couple of fights, and then, by spring we're out of this thing. It was 8 years, 1776 to 1783. My math is bad. 7 years? Depending on the day. Yeah. That's a long time. That's a long time to fight over something. We get the Brenda Dickinson Act, and here we are this much later still fighting over how it's to be implemented. These things don't just happen overnight. They take our lives, and they take our fortunes, and we leave a legacy. And I'm happy. I'm thrilled to be a part of that legacy with you. I know what I'm in for.
Yeah, it's good. You knew what you were in for. You volunteered for the fight, and at very little promise of support.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, you took it, not going into it for any other reason except to support the rights of your family and for the home educating parents in Florida. And then hopefully they'll realize how important it is to support the work here, because they're not here. We're doing what they can't do if they're home educating their children. They can't be at the Capitol every day. And that's why having somebody in the Capitol is so important. I mean, how many, it happened to me a lot, but you had an example of where you'd gone to the Capitol, gone home, changed clothes, relaxing, and then you got a call. You need to be back down here. We have something. So
I had literally just gotten my suit
made
off.
The sacrifice.
Yeah.
You made the choice, and that was one of the things that in my mind was going to determine whether somebody was going to take up the torch. One, did they have a call from God? Did they have children young enough it was going to be a long-range fight? And number three, were they willing to move to Tallahassee? And not knowing how it was going to work out, you stepped out in faith and said, I'm willing to move to Tallahassee. Yeah. I don't know how we're going to do this, but it happened. And God just prepared the way in every step along the way. And so I feel like, he's placed you here to take up that torch and continue the fight, which in a way is kind of a fulfillment of that vision. I wanted to mention when Reagan was on that Teen Pack was it was something I wanted to do as the Home Education Foundation, but we didn't have the people to do it. I mean, now we may have the opportunity although we don't need to recreate the
Yeah.
wheel.
Yeah.
So one of the youngest legislators, Jennifer Sullivan, who was in the House, who became a very strong leader. She was the chairman of the Education Committee when she was there, worked in Teen Pack, and she actually went to Washington and wrote the curriculum that they use in Teen Pack. And it gave her that desire to run for office and to change things in the legislature. And it kind of is like a bug that bites you, you know.
Yeah.
You kind of get involved in it and you want to change things. You want to do a good job.
Mhm.
But being the youngest, it's that vision that parents and their, you know, the children that are trained up. I mean, Reagan's age and older than that, they're people, and now they're adults, but they're in places of influence and responsibility, and that have led to the leadership positions that I envisioned back in 1985
Yep.
and through 90. So a vision is coming to pass. And one other thing, and you were kind of responsible for this, but I didn't really need to go out with a bang. I just needed to shift the responsibility. But thanks to FPEA and your work and Sue Pooch Farron's work and a few others that were involved in the recognition ceremony, the thing that hit me the most is I couldn't even get enough kids together to make a 4-H team, which was 4. Mine made up 2.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Back in the early days, and standing on that stage when, you know, people were talking about me, all I could think about was going from that handful
Wow.
of people to that vast audience. How many were in it? I don't know, but it was like, wow, you know, that we not only are teaching our own children, we have a movement, a very strong movement. And if we will take our platform upon which we're standing and continue to fight for our rights, we can change things.
That's right. We have great momentum, especially thanks to all of those early people who saw the need, felt the confidence to figure it out and pioneer that way. Well, I'm thankful to all of you for that, because it's so critical to giving us that platform and that foundation from which to move forward, and that momentum that we have is huge. Listen, if you're listening to this conversation, you want to be a part of it. One, you can always find us live on Facebook, where we take comments live. So if anybody has questions, throw them in there. You can also drop questions while we're live into our Discord, and we can take questions from in there and talk about them live as well. But if you're looking for connection, or you're looking for something like this as you move forward, and that kind of support behind you as a homeschool parent or a home education parent, or a young person who wants to be more involved, I have so many ideas about how to get our young people involved and things that we can do. I would love to see that next generation be strong. I'm sick and tired of listening to people who are older talk down on the younger generations when they're capable of so much. They're capable. There's so much potential, and they're capable of so much, and they're smart. Young people are so smart. Those little minds are like sponges, and I love it. I love it. And if you can attach any kind of passion to those kind of moments, they will set things off in ways you can't often even dream. They just don't always know all of the idiosyncrasies or the extra little points that someone with more experience can help them foresee. So I really want to see young people involved, and I'm excited about that. Working hard to turn our Discord community into a place that fosters those kinds of mindsets. If you are someone who's concerned about the scholarship, join the crowd. This party is already in progress. I very much am in favor of parents being empowered to do what they do. And the way that I look at it, as it is an opportunity, every opportunity has risks and rewards. And there are great risks, and there is a reward. And if you're being taxed and you would like to decide how to better use some of that funds, by all means, you are capable of proving that you can do a better job by grabbing that scholarship and putting the money where your mouth is and giving it a go. And if you want help, guidance, support, confidence, connections, our Discord community is a great place for that. There are so many parents who are veteran homeschoolers in there. There are evaluators that have access to other parents who are all doing all kinds of things, and they can share wonderful ideas. It's also important that we have a united voice. I do think that it's not lost on me that the Declaration of Independence did have at least some unity among the colonies when they set off to pick that fight. And as you know, keeping with that, we have to have some unity about us as well. We have to understand what it is we believe in and what we stand for. And at the Home Education Foundation, we look at things parents first. They're your children. You should be the one to decide, period. It's your authority, your expertise, your experiences, your wisdom that you should have the opportunity to pour into your kids. And if your decision is to blend that with private school options or classes here or there, or you need public school, you're the parent, you decide. But you should have the full range of freedom at your disposal to choose from. And that should not be diminished or restricted. That should be yours. And that's what we fight for. That's what we're all about. I think with that, we're going to bring our podcast to a close today. Brenda, thank you so much for helping me wax philosophical today. And maybe not get off the rails on the crazy train too bad. Thank you. Thank you for your legacy and all of the work that you've put in over the years. I'm very, very happy to be a part of it. And I'm very excited about the opportunities of people that have been approaching me lately with all kinds of ways to empower parents. There's a very exciting organization that I recently had a conversation with. I'm not going to mention who they are yet, last week. And there's so many ways for parents to take the helm and to be the decision makers, the educators, the principal, etc. They can help prop their kids up for success in life. And if you're looking for community, you found it. Brenda, is there anything you want to add?
I do want to add one thing.
Close this out.
Two things. Is I realize you're about the same age as my children, who, so the vision has come to pass in your generation. And then I look at the senators that are home educating their children. They're all about your age also. Right. I don't know that they were home educated. I don't know their background, but they're very much in support of the right to home educate your children. So that leadership has passed now to your generation. As the vision that I had back in the earlier part of, or the later part of 1980 and 1990s has in fact come to pass because of the senators that we have. We haven't identified all the House members that are home educating, but I do know there's some over there. And so that generation has passed, and y'all are fulfilling the vision that we had. One other thing I want to say is also technology and the way people connect and communicate these days has greatly changed from the days where we needed personal hugs to continue doing what we were doing because there was just a handful, across the state. And so we had in-person support groups, and people have now found support groups in other ways of supporting each other. One of the things that I find that people like so much about classical conversation is the weekly meetings that they have. So that's their support group. But you have created an online support group with Discord, and it fulfills that in-person need to connect. So things change, and I'm so grateful that you have the vision and the skills to be able to do those things. But I think it helps parents who are trying this journey by themselves to get some support. So I think that's a great opportunity.
Awesome. Well, the thing, I was so nerdy back in school, and now it's cool.
It's paid off. It's paid off.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. I'm going to go ahead and take us out, and I appreciate you being with us today, Brenda. We're going to say thank you again to our top sponsors. Thank you to Arete, FPEA, Fisher Precious Metals, TBHC Group. If you haven't got your tickets, we are so looking forward to seeing you guys at the TBHC, the Tampa Bay Homeschool Conference, this week. So if you haven't got your tickets, you really should get on it quickly. There is a discount code that's still in our Discord. It's good for now. Take it or leave it. Join the Discord, get the code, and get a discount. Otherwise, we'll see you next week on the podcast or at the conference. And until then, have your Monday back, and thank you for being with us.